in their digestive tract, which will actually allow them to break down cellulose. So eating of the plants won't do much. If they could perhaps crush the plants down and apply it as a poultice, or infuse the plants and make it as an eardrop, that might do some damage, but they can't do that. So while it would be natural for everyone to assume, why don't we just call a vet and help the lions, we need to remember that this is the natural thing, and lions do get sick and sometimes they do die. It needs to happen in the bush. Mother Nature here has a balance that she's established over the millennia, and one of the mistakes humans make is to try and intervene too soon. We get so fixated on the single animal. Watch what this young lion is doing, the one on the left hand side. Have a look at that. I don't know if you noticed. Let's see if he does it again. There was some urine there on the floor, that wet patch, that slightly discolored patch. And this lion, even as young as, exhibited the Flehmen grimace. Oh, have a look at him. Is he killing mom's tail? Here we go. And killing it again. And killing it again. As I tell you it. I have infinite respect for moms. You have my empathy. I don't know how you do it. Not only lion moms, but human mothers as well. All you mommies watching out there, I must be honest with you, hats off. So coming back to that little lion, he exhibited the Flehmen grimace, which is an action you see adult lions do when they open glands in the roof of their mouth and they pass scent over them. These glands are super packed with sensory or olfactory glands, which allow them to correctly determine hormonal status and a number of other things. And that young cub definitely flared those glands. I don't actually know enough about the physiology of these glands to tell you whether or not they're active, or even how active they are in cubs this young. You generally only see that behavior with sub-adult and adult lion. This is the first time I've ever seen a cub do it at this age. Oh, look at that. That is another just hunting technique there. That one cub that was on top of the bank was using elevation on the side of a game path. Let's see if he jumps down here. Let's see. He's going to go. Chicken. Although I must be honest, it is quite high for such a small little animal. Let's see if they had their brave pulls this morning. Watch that. Once again, flattening themselves. I mean, it's like we're watching hunt after hunt after hunt here without the blood and gore. Have a look how camouflage that young cub is there in that grass. Perfect coat matching the grass color this time of year. Oh, where are you going? That's the young male cub. Also, just trying to make sure that they're using the lay of the land over there. Oh, there we go. Let's see if this time there was some more brave pulls. No? The other cubs are coming on top of the bank here towards us. Now getting to that point where they're just that little bit too far away from mom. I'm expecting them to come rushing back again. There we go. Hi there, Dory. You asked me a question. At what age could we expect to see one lioness dominant over another? And Dory, within a litter like this, there won't be any dominance structures. They will be mates and equal on equal standing. There you go. You won't see any pronounced dominance play or hierarchies developing amongst litter mates, not even amongst the pride members. Generally the pride members all are together. There won't be one lioness that will be more dominant than another, and equally so out of the male lions there also won't be one lion more dominant than the other either. They sort that out right now where we're in this phase. It's not like hyena or elephant, even buffalo. So Dave in Toronto, hey Dave, if asked, will lion cubs mimic adult lions' behavior, or are some of the things that they do instinctive? And I must be honest, I think it's a bit of both, Dave. I've seen them mimic what mom does, especially when they get a bit older and they start learning how to hunt. But a lot of their actions are instinctual. The playing that you're witnessing right now, that's instinctual playing. So hi Tammy from all the way from Washington, or Washington State, Toronto I should say, has asked, will the ear infection taint her milk, or could it even result in her death if it's allowed to carry on? Tammy, I don't think it'll taint her milk. That's got a lot to do with her general health and well-being. Might be affected by her condition dropping as a result of her body just trying to fight off the infection. I don't think the exact infection is going to do much to her milk. I see that her ear is hanging. I don't see it being too swollen. It's very red and raw and bleeding on the inside of the ear. And that could cause a little bit of discomfort and perhaps even a bit of distraction. But I've seen lions overcome much, much worse and still look after their babies, still survive. The moment I'm mildly concerned about what it is, it's more inquisitive than anything else. The first sign that we'll get that she's actually being negatively affected by this, or very negatively affected by this ear infection, would be the fact that she'd abandoned her cubs. So she hasn't done that yet. She's still in very good condition. Now, we didn't want to change it, we needed to change the battery, and we cut out. It's just one of these new camera, on the new camera, is just one of these things you're getting a bit used to. So please excuse us for that. But in the interim, she stood up and she moved a couple of meters down the riverbed. I'm sure it was just in response to the cubs getting a little bit too boisterous with her, and into deeper shade. There wasn't too much sun going on where she was, but look at that little cub over there. I don't know what he's doing. He's having a wee. And in response to me asking for some information about the ear infection before I get back from game drive, Georgianne in Illinois has given us and provided us with a potential diagnosis. And I must say thank you so much for that. So here we go. Here's the hypothesis or the prognosis. So a hair buildup, or an injury to the ear, could cause that red, raw, swollen look that we're seeing at the moment, and licking seems to help it. So her sisters licking the ear will clear up the infection and clear out the hair, and with no other obvious side effects. So although it looks a bit rough, I must say she doesn't look like she's been injured, like she's been kicked on the side of the head. I must say that out of the two, I would probably say that a hair buildup or some blockage is the most likely cause from what I can see where I am. And it looks like licking clears it up. The rough tongues of these lions clear it up. I'm actually going to move my vehicle a little bit. We've got some grass in our way, and I'm sure that that's creating a little bit of a distraction. So if you give me 2 seconds, I'm just going to change position slightly, just so that we can get the grass out of the shot for you. And that should allow us. It's a slightly more elevated position that we're in, and that should allow us some better view of what these cubs. They still look so full of energy. Bree has asked an interesting question. Are there any obvious differences between lions in an open system and in a closed system? Bree, I'm going to throw a curveball here before I actually answer the question. There are in actual fact, lions have stopped occurring outside of closed systems as of a year or two ago. Lions only occur in protected systems, and their numbers are drastically reducing. It's a huge conservation topic at the moment about what to do about the rapidly declining lion populations across Africa. Some estimate that there are fewer than 25,000 lion left in Africa, which is less even than the rhino population in the Kruger National Park. So there's a curveball for you. Give everyone a cause for concern. Lions are in need of some protection. But to answer your question, lions in a closed system battle to maintain their genetic depth. And so what happens in a closed system is new males or new blood will have to be added from time to time. And I'm talking about smaller game reserves and smaller conservation areas, as I would determine a closed system. An open system, per definition, is where wild stock or wild genes that have nothing to do with the pedigree of that particular pride, are introduced periodically. And that still exists in the Kruger National Park. Africa is very, very lucky that we still have vast areas or vast protection areas where lions have occurred forever. And the gene pool is still very rich and very diverse in these areas. So I hope that answered your question. It was a little bit of a roundabout way. Now what happened over there was we're lying actually quite close to our southern boundary, and a car passed that wasn't a game drive car, and you immediately saw that those cubs playing stopped and they moved into the grass to hide. Oh, have a look at that. And now they're coming back out of the grass once that car moved on. Just goes to show, just when you start thinking that these lions see all vehicles as one thing, just a slight change in the color of a car So Dr. Debbie, hey Debbie, you've given us another option to consider here, and that ear mites may have caused this, as she has seen ear mites in domestic cats cause the similar symptoms to what we're seeing, and it's absolutely feasible, Debbie. I can't see why it wouldn't be feasible in actual fact. Now, I'm going to be getting a little bit closer to these cubs than usual, and the reason for that is that I don't want them to play on this main road. Cars travel down here sometimes at speed, and I want them to get off the road. So it does mean that I have chased them off the road a little bit, and it also means that they are moving across our southern boundary, and this is about where we are going to lose them. We can't go where they're walking. It's one of those things. All life has boundaries, and we've just reached a physical boundary of where we can traverse at this time. Another question came up in which I wasn't probably clear. How do I know that the cubs were born 800 meters directly in front of this lioness's nose? Well, as you've noticed today, that when there's a decent network of field guides around, there is the chance that we see what is going on, or we know what is going on, at least either from tracks or from actually seeing these animals. And lionesses that have cubs return to a same place. They're almost like the spokes of a wheel. They'll move to and from dens, looking for food, joining their families, going for water. And trackers here have a very keen idea of when this starts happening, when they start witnessing this phenomenon, either in tracks or by watching the behavior of lions. And we predicted where her cubs were, and it wasn't too long after that prediction that they were seen by the guides of the property that this lioness is walking in right now. And that's how we knew where her cubs were born. They're just walking down the riverbed. That lioness was making some contact calls. Her ears perked up and she immediately started to move. So I have no doubt that she heard someone, one of her pride mates, answering that contact call, and she's now making her way to them for the day. But have a look at that dappled light in the riverbed. It's just beautiful. So Blair in British Columbia, all the way in Canada, wow, and that's far away from here, has asked, has the cubs exhibited any social grooming behavior yet? And that's absolutely, Blair. They will groom one another. Once they stop playing with one another, they'll take some time to groom one another. Not only will the adults groom the cubs, but the cubs will groom one another. It's called allo grooming, and it's a very important part of the social structure and establishing social bonds. And there they go, they've just bounded away around the corner. I can't see them anymore. Genre, can you see them? Genre's still got some view, so you're still going to have them for a couple of minutes. But I must say, before they leave us, we were really blessed with that sighting. It has been a very long time since I've had such playful cubs in a sighting for so long. And in such good light. Really blessed out here at Djuma and Arathusa Private Game Reserves here in the Sabi Sands of the Kruger National Park. I must be honest with you, as I just mentioned, it's been a long time since I've had such a quality lion and cub interaction, and I'm very glad to have shared that with you today. And now we need to come up with a plan of what we're going to do next. I'm almost at a loss for what we're going to do next, because we've managed to achieve our goal today. We came out here to look for some lion tracks. We heard some impala giving alarm calls while we were with some elephant, and then we followed up on the alarm calls, and here a lioness comes walking out of the grass. She was calling her cubs. We joined that, and we've been with that for the last hour or so. Have a look, think around. I heard some elephant a bit earlier. We might actually go and have a look at them and see if we can catch up with that elephant that we left. So in response to a question or a statement I made about dwindling lion populations, Anna Marie has asked, or has noted, why, if there's so much wild places left in Africa, the lion population is dwindling like they are? And really, like anything, space is becoming a problem for human expansion. And wilderness areas in Africa are definitely have a grey area on their boundaries. And this grey area is contended. People need to graze their cattle, and the cattle provide them with food and milk and the ability to generate an income for their families. And lions are obviously, they like killing cows for food. They've also got to feed their families. And unfortunately, in these lion-human interactions, lions quite often come around or come off second best. And we're seeing it more and more and more. People-lion interactions are becoming more frequent. Lions are coming out of national parks that are getting smaller as they are forced to provide value to their populations. And the value comes either in the form of employment, or comes in the form of money or job created. And if wildernesses can't provide that for the people, they reduce in size, their budgets are not upheld, and poaching becomes a problem. And so it's just as a result of an ever expanding human population, poverty, etc., etc. So I've decided what we're going to do. We are going to carry on our search for some elephants or something else interesting to show you. I'm going to carry on the road that I was on, and we're going to be linking back through to Jamie. I'm sure she is very jealous of the fact that she hasn't had any time on camera virtually today, and I'm sure she's got a whole bunch of interesting things to tell you, and we'll catch up in a while. So, looking forward to catching up.
Welcome back, guys. I hear you've been having the most fantastic morning with those wonderful cubs. I'm maybe just a little bit jealous. So while you guys were with Steph, I hear you were asking some interesting questions about phlegm and grimacing. So the process that animals follow when they are pulling the scent up into the organ of Jacobson. And if you can imagine it almost as being an organ that's almost able to taste, smell, similar to what we can sometimes do, but even more enhanced and really very, very intense. And when they do that motion where they're lifting up their nose and their lips, what they're actually doing is activating all of those nerves and pulling that scent right up and to touch the organ that sits right on the top of the palate. And when you look at the skulls of animals, what you find is an incredible hole from the palate up into the sinuses, and you can see where very often you still find an intact nerve pathway, and it's a thick nerve pathways in some of the bigger animals. So very interesting, and it does mean that they devote a lot of brain space to that organ and interpreting those signals. But it's something that you'll see in basically every animal, and snakes as well. So when you see snakes flicking their tongue out, that's actually what they're doing, is they're pulling that scent back into the organ of Jacobson. Just to give you a bit of an update on what I've been doing while you guys were with Steph, I was trundling around a drainage line, walking around, just trying to have a look and see if I can pick up on Tingana's tracks, basically going in from the opposite side to where I saw his last tracks going in. Unfortunately, it is a very thick block, so it's entirely possible I may have missed the tracks coming in or coming out. But I am just checking a little bit further north of my position where I had the last tracks, just in case he's come along to this side of things. And as I get to know the area a little bit better, I'm going to start being able to not necessarily predict, but at least have a rough idea about where some of the thicker game paths might be. So paths that the animals might use more regularly, and where I've got a better chance of picking up the tracks in that direction. It's amazing to watch. I would not claim to be a master tracker in any sense of the word. I'm sure that I know that there are definitely people out there who are far more skilled than I am in the art of tracking. And it is an art and it is a skill. And it's fascinating to watch some of those real master trackers, usually people who've grown up in the bush, and the way that they approach things. And sometimes it seems like they're in the mind of the animal and they know exactly where to go. And we've got one of my favorite antelope just ahead of us. And a little baby. Hello, guys. So we've got some female kudu. I'm just going to let them, they are going to keep following and walking in this direction, so I'm just going to stay where I am and hopefully they come out into the open nicely. Truly beautiful, graceful antelope, quite extraordinary, and very, very powerful jumpers. So I've seen a kudu jump a fence that is well probably over my height, close to 2 meters, and jump the fence without even having a running start, simply from standing, just hopped and sprung over the top. Extraordinary creatures. You can see with those big ears and those big eyes that immediately tells us, even without having to know, exactly what kind of environment these guys come from, or the habitat that they live in. So with big ears like that, big eyes, it tells you that this animal is used to living in very close environments, quite thick woodland, and that is a definite preference for them, so that they've got these great radar ears and big eyes to pick up any kind of threat that might be sneaking up on them in the thick bush. And their habitat also lends itself to one of the interesting, very, very strong correlations in nature. So with things like kudu, nyala, bushbuck, animals that inhabit quite thick vegetation, you will find that only the males have horns, or at least there's a very strong correlation between the two. I'm just going to shift slightly, maybe we can get a little bit of a better view. So the reason that antelope have horns might seem pretty self-explanatory, and there's two of them. One is for defense, so defense from predators, allowing them to actually attack and defend themselves and their offspring. And the other one is for reproductive success. So being a big male with big horns, you can fight off all of the competitors and be able to get all of your mating rights to pass on your genetics. So in animals that live in open areas, such as wildebeest, or further sort of towards the desert areas, the oryxes, the gemsbok, those animals you'll find that both sexes have horns, because they live in a far more open environment, so they need to rely more on those horns as a defense mechanism. But for animals like kudu and nyala, only the males have horns, the females don't have horns, and that's because horns are actually a disadvantage. When you live in thick like this, it's a lot more difficult to run away from predators if you're having to watch for extensions on the top of your head. But the males keep the horns because they need it to compete with each other for reproductive success. So a very strong correlation, I would say, the most reliable theory about why some females have horns and why others don't. You can see just by the way that she pricked up her ears, she's a little bit alert, but nothing serious. So what we'll find as these guys are feeding, they're going to walk into the wind. And we've got a little drongo there, fork-tailed drongo. We're following behind these guys just to catch any of the insects that they might disturb while they're walking through the bush and feeding. Very sweet little antelope. And there he goes after the kudu. And he will follow them potentially all day. They are a great source of disturbance for insects, so it's really in his favor to follow them. And for them, it works into their advantage as well, because they've got an extra set of eyes that's potentially higher than they are, that will let them know if there's any threats coming. But as I was saying just before we focused a little bit on the drongo, these guys will actually walk into the wind and feed into the wind for two reasons. One is that they can smell any threats that might be ahead of them, so they don't need to worry too much about that. Their incredible sense of smell will let them know if there's a threat up ahead. But also because while they're browsing on the leaves, the trees actually release tannins, which make the leaves taste very bitter, very uncomfortable to eat, which is a defense mechanism from the trees, and ensures that the browsers don't hit them too hard that they can't recover and regrow. And those tannins will also stimulate the production of tannins in other plants in the area. So the wind blows those tannins away, and the kudu can keep feeding into the wind so that they don't get that bitter, bitter taste. So these guys have moved off, still feeding. Maybe they'll let us know if there's a leopard around, you never know. So going back to our previous sighting with the impala herd, Sibusiso, aka the Black Mamba, welcome to the Sunrise Safari, and he would like to know if he's read in a couple of books that impala can actually delay giving birth by up to a month, and does this have any negative effects or anything like that? It's a theory that I've heard fairly regularly, and I think there must be some truth in it, in terms of the labor process being induced by proper rains, so they have good food quality, the mothers have good food quality to help them feed the young ones and raise them and produce milk for them. It doesn't have any negative effects on them. It is still, to me, it's not a voluntary thing. So the impala females will not, in my mind, have any sort of control over that process. Just want to have a look at some tracks quickly. Nope. Hyena. Still not our leopard. So yeah, the females won't have a voluntary control over it. Might be stimulated because it competes. This theory actually competes with one of the theories as to how the impala, the female impala, time the production, their labor, so that most of the babies are born at the same time. And that theory explains it as it being governed by day length. So the longer the day gets, and at a certain point the days are the perfect length in order to induce the birth, which also potentially works out. Females in different areas will give birth times, and obviously from east to west your sunset times will change. So it does work in my mind to an extent, but still something we don't really fully understand. And that is, to me, one of the best things about working out here and living out here, is that we can have plenty of theories that we read in books about animal behavior and the various aspects of the animals. But as Andrew and I were just discussing earlier, there's some things that we just can't explain, and I'm sure there are rational explanations, there are reasons, but it's still a magical thought to think that we don't fully understand everything that happens out here. Buffalo dung in the road. Looks very much like a cow pat, and it's always interesting, and actually might be something I kind of want to tell you guys a little bit about. Just while I'm looking for leopard tracks, cool, thank you, Andrew. So I'm just going to hop out quickly. One okay?
Yes.
Cool. So when you're looking at the different types of animal dung, there's always factors that tell you a lot about how the animal lives and also how the animal digests. So this buffalo dung, which is nice and fresh, is very, very finely digested. So it is I once had a guest ask me very frantically, Jamie, what would your mother think if she saw you rummaging through all of the herbivore dung that you dig through? And I told her that my mom knows, she understands. I've been doing it since I was old enough to walk. So you can see this dung is very, very finely digested. There's hardly any grass particles left, and if there are, it's very fine. And you'll find things like the antelope dung, even with the pellets, it is very finely chewed up, and that is because of their digestive system. So the way that they digest is in a ruminant system, the same way as cows. They've got 4 stomachs, and they are able to regurgitate the cud that they then chew and redigest. So the whole process is quite, I wouldn't say laborious, but it is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very thorough. So they get the most nutrition that they can out of that grass by breaking it down again and again in the various 4 stomachs and by repeatedly chewing it. If you compare it to something like zebra dung, which I will go and find, zebra are hindgut fermenters. So they are able to eat more, but they do not digest it as finely or as thoroughly. So what you'll find happens is if you compare 2 animals of a similar size, so a zebra and a wildebeest, roughly the same weight, give or take, and the wildebeest, which is a ruminant, eats about half of what the zebra will eat. So the zebra needs to bulk graze because it is a hindgut fermenter. It only has 1 stomach, and the rest of the digestion happens in the intestine. And it's just interesting to observe because there are different advantages, obviously, with the wildebeest needing to eat less, but then also the zebra is able to utilize even poorer quality foods and just bulk graze constantly. So in times when food quality is a little bit poor, then maybe you start seeing it shifting in favor of the bulk graze. Hashtag safari or questions at Wild. Of freezing cold reaching the Sabi sands, it never really gets that cold here anyway, but I am already nice and warm, and I apologize if I'm squinting into the camera. I will locate my cap as soon as possible. So playing with herbivore dung, as I did, has so horrified some of my various guests in the past. Playing with herbivore dung is pretty much perfectly safe. So they don't tend to carry any kind of high parasite load or anything along those lines. I definitely would not be doing the same thing with predator scat. That carries a lot more in the way of unpleasant parasites given their diet and their lack of interest in worrying about hygiene. So just while we're sitting here, and I've got him sitting beautifully in the sun, we've got a fork-tailed drongo. Some of the regular viewers may have heard plenty about, and we did see next to the kudu, but they are one of my favorite birds. They have a wonderful call when it's just their natural call, but they are also fantastic mimics. And very often if you hear a bird call that you know but sounds a little bit off, just something just a little bit strange about it, it's often a drongo. There he goes. And they will smoothly transition between their own call and then immediately link into another bird's call. And it works to their advantage. I'm sure some of you might have heard about this, but they do imitate alarm calls of things like meerkat and mongooses, so that when those animals have a nice juicy piece of, say, a scorpion or a cricket or something that the drongo decides that he wants, they'll actually imitate their alarm call that tells them to drop what they're doing and to dash into the burrow to safety because there's an immediate threat. And of course it is just the drongo playing tricks with them, but it is a very fascinating and very clever little bird that he's able to figure that system out. like to know how ruminants decide when to send the regurgitated food back to the next stomach along in the chain, because obviously it comes from the first stomach, goes back up into their mouths, and then comes back down. Thank you for your question, Donna. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's something that I have to brush up my knowledge on. I could have told you perfectly maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but at the moment I'm struggling to remember the exact details. But I seem to remember that the first stomach actually has almost 2 chambers. So the food goes in initially, is brought up as the cud and chewed for a little bit, and then swallowed into the second chamber that then connects down to the second stomach. I'll have to double check up on my facts with that, but it's not a conscious effort on the part of the animal. It is a physiological thing, obviously with a difference with the way that they swallow the bolus that they've been chewing on, the cud that they've been chewing on. But I'm not exactly sure how it works. I do remember there's at least some division between that first stomach, just to make things a little bit less confusing. But no, it would not be a consciously controlled decision. Digestion, and I still have a little bit of buffalo dung on my fingers. Sherry would like to know about the digestive system of elephants and if they are slow digesters or rapid. The answer to that is it is a fairly rapid and actually quite ineffective digestive mechanism. So they will excrete or defecate out about roughly half of what they consumed during the day. Waving hello to some of the other guys working in this area. So yes, it is not any kind of ruminant system. They are hindgut fermenters, similar to mini tracks, similar to what I was talking about with the zebra, which is ineffective. It's not as thorough, and you'll find that the older the elephant is, the poorer the condition of their teeth, and often the less that they've chewed their food. So they start defecating, and their dung has got larger and larger and more intact pieces of dung, or pieces of plant material that they haven't yet chewed and digested. Which is why you'll often find, especially in marula season, when the elephants are working their way through the marula fruit, which they do love, you'll find that the elephant's dung often has quite intact marula fruits. We're just going to stop at a tree while I'm talking about it. So, this actually looks to me a little bit more like a false marula, but the process is very similar, and the two trees do look very similar. It's hard to tell when they haven't got leaves, but the sort of chipped away pieces of the bark look more elongated to me than necessarily in a true marula. But the point that I want to make works the same for both of these trees. So marula trees and false marula trees are dioecious, which means that they have separate sexes on each tree is a separate sex, either a male or a female. Now, it's quite easy to see during the fruiting season, because then obviously if the tree is producing fruit, it is a female. But it's less easy to see when there is no fruit and it's not fruiting season. So what you'll find is you start looking at the area around the tree and potentially seeing how much small growth there is at the base of the tree. And that is because elephants and other animals enjoy that marula fruit so much that they will often tend to flatten the area quite dramatically. So it looks to me potentially like this is a female tree. There's not very much small growth in the area. It is, of course, a rough guess. It's not perfect, but it does go to show just how well everything is connected. Carrying on our conversation on the various types of dung and feces and scat of various animals, which is always an interesting topic and one that is enjoyable for everybody. David has a question about hyena scat and whether or not that carries the same level of parasites, or whether in fact that would be killed by their incredibly strong digestive acids. And hyena do have the most phenomenal digestive system. They can pass through and actually dissolve bone almost completely. You very, very seldom find any kind of bone fragments in hyena scat. And it is fascinating to see how well they do that. And definitely the parasites that they are eating and ingesting from the kill would be pretty much dissolved completely away within the stomach chamber. But you still don't want to be playing with your bare hands with hyena scat, because it still has to go through the intestines, which will definitely potentially have some kind of parasite, and also afterwards you're going to get a whole load of parasites infesting that scat. And interestingly, on that subject, you often get told that if you pick up a tortoise shell, so something, a tortoise that has died and you found the shell, you should always be aware that you should wash your hands afterwards. And the reason behind that, or one of the many reasons apart from the obvious rotting away of the meat, is that tortoises will often go and feed on either carcasses and old bones or potentially hyena scat. And the reason they do that is for the calcium. They, especially the female tortoises, need to really boost their calcium intake when they're going to lay eggs. And so they do tend to pick up on the parasites that are found in that dung or in that scat. So very interesting. It also means that potentially during times of anthrax scares, which do happen not so much here but up in the northern sections, and especially during repeated droughts and dry seasons, you have to be especially careful of something along those lines. So I'm just checking along the cut line, but I still want to go back to the area that leopard was in. I have a very strong feeling I've missed him somewhere in the drainage line or in the block there. I haven't picked up on his tracks coming out on any of the roads. Yes, I have. Will that be okay, Andrew, if I shift slightly like that? So, there we go. There's no way of knowing exactly if these are the same tracks. I am quite far away from where I left the other leopard tracks, but he was heading in this general direction. And the tracks to me look roughly the same size as the ones I was looking at. For those of you who are regular viewers and know the leopards a little bit, I very strongly suspect that those tracks were Tingana's just because of the area that I found them in. So roughly around where he had that kudu kill that was stolen by the Styx pride. And these tracks unfortunately cross into our northern boundary. So unfortunately I don't think we're going to be able to follow them across. I can actually see them quite clearly coming underneath the car and moving up along a game path that's just there. So he's moved up under there. Again, it's impossible for me to know exactly, but maybe Tingana. They look to be fairly sizable male tracks, so maybe Mvula. Once I start to get to know the animals a little bit better, I really want to build up a database of their tracks and their track sizes so that I can get to know them a bit better. Guys, while I try and work out if this is the same set of tracks that I was following up on this morning, I'm actually going to send you back to Steph, who has returned to the said carcass that disappeared, or at least was stolen, and I will get back to you as soon as I know a little bit more detail.
Oh, welcome back to us. I heard that the tracks of that male leopard that Jamie have been following the whole day unfortunately crossed over our northern boundary, but that's to be expected from time to time. As many times as they cross out, they definitely cross back in, so another time. In the meantime, myself and Jandra have decided to come and have a look at what's going on around this buffalo carcass. And we've just got a bunch of vultures festooning the tree. Some white-backed vultures and a hooded vulture. And they are they're sitting on that knobthorn over there, which is quite a nice knobthorn actually. They don't usually have branches that are ideal for vultures to sit on. Being big birds like they are, they need those prominent horizontal branches to land on. And that tree's just provided a very handy landing zone. Now, nothing's happening around this buffalo carcass. In actual fact, I would declare it pretty much finished from a large mammal perspective. And it looks like the vultures have managed to pick off every little last bit of meat as well. As you no doubt will start to see now, just the skull, spine and ribs are left, and I do see some back legs, which as soon as the hyena gets here will be carried away. And there's a few little scraps of meat on, but nothing that's going to sustain a lion or a leopard. Isn't it fantastic? And over the coming days and weeks, this carcass will slowly be dismembered even further and carried around to scatter the bush all the way around here. The horns are going to be lying here for years to come, I predict. Slowly being broken down by horn moth caterpillars and by keratin beetles, and the bones will be carried away by porcupine and mice, and well, not mice, porcupine and hyena and jackal will carry some bones away. Elephant might even carry a few bones into the surrounding bush. They sometimes carry around bones as toys, but yeah, basically it's finished. Amazing how quickly it actually happens, and this was such a hive of activity for so long, and now everything's dead quiet. A few stray footprints around of the lions that were in attendance around this carcass, and then that's that. Gone. Bushes return to normal. On to the next one, so they say. So we're going to carry on driving. I think it's a good time of day to go and... Ooh, the fly on me. Good time of day to go and stick our noses into Buffelshoek Dam to go and see what's hanging around there. It's the closest water point to where we are now. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go down there and we're going to go and see what we can see. So temperature has increased from this morning at sunrise, probably around about 20 degrees or about 60 or so, 65 degrees Fahrenheit now, and it looks like it's going to be quite a hot afternoon. I might actually start taking my jacket off. Winter's not completely finished here by us. Well, what we like to call winter is not completely finished here by us. I'm expecting 1 or 2 more cold snaps the end of July and beginning of August. Usually there's a couple of cold snaps that come through, and then around Spring Day, the 1st of September, we also usually have a bit of a cold snap, maybe some rain, and then our first really big rains we can expect on around about the 10th of October, plus or minus the 10th of October, a week or so in either direction. And then the hot month of October, hell month, where temperatures here will go in excess of 50 degrees, 45, 50 degrees. No rain, no water, but lots of activity around the watering holes, the last few watering points that you get. And then as we slip into November and go into December, we'll start seeing an increase in thunder showers, with December, January, February and March our wet season, or our deep summer. Bush is very open. You know, it always astounds me what some of you may be able to do. Take a screen grab, save it under today's date, and contrast it to exactly the same time of day in January, and you will see that every single thing that is brown right now will be vibrant green. Grass will be standing knee high, lots of different colors. The seasonal change out here is just incredible. I love it. My favorite season is summer, deep summer. I like the month of May in the bush, and I also enjoy deep summer, January. It's a lot harder to see big animals or big boned animals in January, but the diversity of life that we have around the bush that time of year, for me, just makes up for it. There's just so much to see. Frogs and insects, from snakes to birds. All migratory birds are back. Many different types of insects, many different types of flowers. All the grasses are in full bloom. So for me, from a diversity point of view, which is what I enjoy, January, February are some of my favorite times of year. Quite tough to see big animals, as I said. It's not everybody's favorite time of the year. I know Brent would disagree with me. He enjoys these months. Let us see what's happening at the dam. We've just come up to the dam now. Oh, we've got a male nyala that's just been drinking. Absolutely beautiful antelope, actually. Can really take and have a look at those horn tips pointing away from one another. old ram. I'm going to go forward a little bit so we can show you that. Those horn tips that are pointing well away from one another. Mature bull nyala, past prime, past mating time, but absolutely invaluable to the younger males, who will use him as a sparring partner, and he will impart his knowledge on how to win the ladies. Beautiful nyala bull. Now what I am going to do is take my time here. Dams this time of the year are incredibly busy places, and although we've come here and there was only a nyala coming in here, the interesting thing to see will be how quickly the turnaround of mammals is here. Around every watering hole this time of the year there's a turnaround time. In places like Etosha, the turnaround time is 25 minutes. Every 25 minutes all the animals at that pan change completely. And I can fully expect it to be something similar. And while we're doing that, I think we should try and see if we can see this Birchall starling. The light on him is just absolutely incredible. And I'm sure that with the new camera, Jandre is going to be able to take you in closer than you've ever been. So Birchall's glossy starling is what we're having a look at over there. They've got that oiled look to them. I'm going to explain to you now how they manage that, or how is it possible that they get that glossiness on their feathers. Now they're insectivorous birds, so that's not looking for seeds, they're looking for insects. I'm going to reverse a little bit, just so we can keep him in view. And this is what I'm saying, we're taking our time around this watering point. I love watering points or watering holes. This time of year, they are sources of fascination. Now come to how these birds get their glossiness. Their feathers are completely infused with melanin, which is a naturally occurring compound, which makes things black. And then the feathers themselves has this very thick, clear keratin layer over them, which diffuses the light going through, and that gives that glossiness to the feathers. And by varying the thicknesses of that keratin layer on the feathers, they are able to vary the reflections and almost the colors. It goes from a purpley behind the neck. Look at that purple there behind the neck when he bends down. Just going to get my bald head out the way so that the flash of reflected sunlight off of my dome doesn't blind you. I'm going to see if I can actually show you what I mean. So Rubber in Tucson, Arizona has asked, when do the woodlands kingfishers come back? And that is a quintessential summer noise, and you're asking a good question there. They'll come back in late November, early December, when we're expecting the first woodlands kingfishers to come back. That brilliant trilling noise that they make. Look at this starling. That glossiness that you see there, the correct term for it is iridescence. Beautiful. Now, for those just joining the show, you're welcome to send me through questions on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you could email questions at WildEarthTV if you'd like to ask me any questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. Talking about turnover rates at dams, Jamie has just arrived at Djuma watering hole, I'm told, and it's incredibly busy. Now, while we're waiting for our turnaround, we're going to be linking back through to Jamie. Enjoy what she's got to show you.
So guys, welcome back from one dam to another. We've got a wonderful scene here of the zebra coming in to drink. We've also got a nice herd of impala moving through, and I can even see the inyala coming around. So what Steph was telling you earlier about how this time of the year the dams are very busy, this one is perfect proof at the moment. And these guys were actually so thirsty that they came rushing in much faster than I expected to come and drink. And as Andrew pointed out to me, the stallion of this zebra herd was just casually walking at the back, making sure that his females were all safe and sound. And that's a very common way for zebra to move. The dominant or the favorite mare will walk in front, and the stallion will walk at the back and watch over his females and his babies. So it is a dry time for the animals in this area, very little groundwater. So this is pretty much their only opportunity to come and have a drink. Or their only option is the dams that still have some water in it. And unfortunately soon this dam is going to start running dry, and they're going to have to move further afield to go and find something to drink. And they do make for a very striking image with their reflections in the water. So at this time of the year, as the animals, the general game species that rely on vegetation for food, as they start to maybe struggle a little bit in terms of survival, and with some of the older individuals starting to lose condition and potentially dying, it is a rough time for them. But as in everything in nature, it swings and roundabouts. So the lions and the leopards and the cheetah and the hyena, the wild dog, all of the predators of this area, their lives are going to be just a little bit easier from now on, because the game is not as dispersed. There's not much in the way of options in terms of drinking, so the predators will be able to target the water holes and the big game paths that lead to them. So swings and roundabouts will be tough for some animals, but we'll probably see that it really helps out. So with those glorious Styx cubs that you guys were seeing this morning with Steph, this will work to their absolute advantage. Their mothers will be able to hunt effectively and keep these guys well fed and well looked after. And I've just noticed up over my left shoulder is actually one of the biggest group of Inyala I've seen since I arrived in this area. There are some impala amongst them, but quite a big grouping of females there. And that to me is quite unusual for this area. You see them in slightly smaller groups, but again, that's entirely habitat dependent, and probably as a result of what I was saying earlier. You often find Inyala very close to lodges and gardens, which is what we are at the moment. So the lodge is just off to the right, and you'll find that lodges tend to water the garden, so the grass around them, even if they are fenced, is nice and lush and still with plenty of nutrition for them. So Inyala do hang out around those areas, which is potentially why we've got such a big herd hanging out here and then coming down to drink. There we go, we've got the little young zebra, not too young, but also starting to move off. Fluffy. Very, very cute. And I love baby zebra and what perfect little miniatures they are of their parents. And obviously every zebra stripe is unique, and the foal will actually bond to his mother and memorize not only her scent but also the stripe pattern that she has, which is actually different on both sides. They're not necessarily symmetrical. Little bit of bonding there. Interesting to continue our discussion, if I can just bring it back to feces one last time. So with zebra dung, the young, which is actually quite common in several different species, the young will actually come through and eat the mother's dung just to get himself the antibodies and the enzymes that he needs to start digesting and eating the various types of solids that he's going to move on to. So the various grasses and so on. So from one busy dam to one fairly quiet dam, I'm going to send you back to Steph just so he can round up his morning, and then I will see you very shortly. Enjoy.
Well, welcome back to a very quiet, for now, Buffelshoek Dam. And apart from a lapwing that we've got on the other side there, a blacksmith lapwing, not much has happened since that Nyala has left. But what a cracker of a morning for us. We decided to go, myself and Jean-Ray decided to leave the camp and go and have a look and see what happened to the Styx pride that we left last night to the cubs. And we went through to Twin Dams, and it just so happened that while we were watching an elephant in the vicinity after a beautiful sunset with an enormous knobthorn tree, we heard some impala giving an alarm call. That led us to the lioness, one of the Styx pride lioness with the 3 cubs. She called her cubs out of the bush, and we spent an unbelievable hour and a half with her in the riverbed, and the cubs busy playing with one another. It was just one of the most beautiful lion sightings I've ever had. Now, and then from there we went through to see what was happening around the buffalo kill, and there was nothing there. And on that, I just want to close with David from New Jersey has asked us if there was any brain and skins left there, and there was nothing. The brains have been picked clean by the hooded vultures. The skin has been eaten completely, probably all by the lion in actual fact. And then we decided to come through to Buffelshoek Dam, and I'm very happy to say that after a fantastic day here, we're just taking in the scenery around us, the peace of the bush around us. And from me, I just want to say goodbye. You'll be joining myself again and Jamie this afternoon. And I hear that that Djuma Dam is going crazy. Excuse me, this fly is going crazy with wildlife. You're going to go back to Jamie and she's going to close the show with you and all the wildlife there. See you soon.
So guys, welcome back, and we're just gonna start wrapping up the show with one of my favorite antelope, really beautiful young kudu bull. And while you guys were with Steph, we watched him very slowly approach the water, really doubly checking that everything was nice and safe before he moved through and down to drink. And it makes sense in this life for them that they lead to be extra cautious even when you're desperately thirsty. It's just not worth the risk of being a little bit careless about which way you're moving. So it's been a very interesting morning on my side. I still haven't given up on that leopard. Those tracks were very, very fresh that I was on this morning. So hopefully I can have a chance to follow up on that a little bit later. I'm still going to take a slightly longer route around to get home, just to double check that the tracks that I saw crossing into Buffelshoek were potentially the ones that I was tracking from this morning. It's a bit tricky. There's a lot of he's crossed over a lot of very popularly driven roads, so the tracks might have disappeared somewhere there. But I am just going to double check and see if we can figure out in time for this afternoon which way that leopard has gone. You guys have had a wonderful time. We've had a lot of in-depth discussions about various types of dung and digestive systems, and enjoyable, slightly more in-depth conversations and questions, which is one of my favorite subjects to go into. I love looking at why the animals are the way that they are. And I've also had some time tracking on foot and getting to know some of the general areas and the drainage lines. But most especially for you guys, I'm sure you had the most wonderful time with Steph and those Styx cubs. I am looking forward to seeing them again. They were one of the first animals I got to see when I was here on my trial drive. So on that note, guys, have a wonderful morning, and we will see you later for the sunset safari.